Hello everyone, welcome to ICC's Game of the Week with your host as always, Joel Benjamin. Even in an individual competition, national characteristics can come to the forefront. Such is the case in the encounter between Ian Nepomniachtchi of Russia and Badur Jobava of Georgia. Jobava's Caro-Kann, the popular choice of Georgian grandmasters, was met by the pet line of several young Russian GMs, the fantasy variation. Jobava in turn responded with a third move specialty of Georgians. While he had fared well earlier in the European Individual Championship against a, quote, teammate of Nepomniachtchi, this time Russia struck back, vaunting Nepomniachtchi into first place with 2 rounds to go. Okay, so Nepomniachtchi Jobava, E4, C6, as I said, Caro-Kann, and here's the pet line, F3, the fantasy variation. Now, while analyzing this game, Sarich Malashauskas, which I decided to do for Game of the Week, I became impressed with the possibilities for interesting play that's offered by this offbeat move, especially because the main line of the Caro-Kann can often be a bit dry. Well, I decided to try it for myself against Georgi Kashishvili in the U.S. Chess League, and thereupon he surprised me with queen to b6. I really didn't know what he was going to do because I couldn't find any games that he's played against the fantasy. But afterwards, when I looked it up, I saw that this was a Georgian specialty, and I wish I'd caught that before the game. Anyway, our game continued knight to c3, d takes e4, f takes e4, e5, knight f3, ed, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop c5. It's about an equal ending, and after many, many ups and downs, the game ended in a draw. Now, go back to position after queen to b6. Earlier in the event, Jobava had defended this variation against Arty Timofeyev, who is one of the big specialists of the fantasy variation, and he's played it many times against a lot of strong players. And Timofeyev played knight c3 also. This is by far the most common move in this position. Now, after d takes e4, Timofeyev likes to recapture with the knight. It makes a little bit of an odd impression. It transposes into a mainline Caro-Kann with the moves f3 and queen b6 in. Now, f3 looks a bit on the weakening side for white, but there is the benefit that when black attacks the knight on e4, that it doesn't have to move from the center to bishop f5 c3. White can keep that knight in the center and develop his pieces around it. Now, Timofeyev in last year's European was successful against another Georgian, Gagunashvili, in this variation, but here Jobava seemed quite ready for it, and he played here the move e5. Perhaps that was a bit of a surprise. He didn't worry about his bishop being hanging to knight f6 or knight d6 check. In both cases, white gets the bishop for the knight, but helps black with his development. I think instead he played knight e2. He traded pawns, and bishop came out to b4 with check. And black developed a very solid, nice position and went on to win. Well, in this encounter, Nepomniachtchi plays a4, and this is a new move. It's not exactly a novelty in this game, but as far as I can tell, this move did not exist in the theory before this tournament, but actually it was played 3 times in the European Individual Championship. That's quite interesting for theory to be developed in that manner. Now, Jobava answers with e5. The obvious alternative is to take on e4 first. and after f takes e4, e5. This is basic idea for black. Or actually, as I should say, first white will play a5, chasing the queen, queen c7, and then capture on e4. Now after e5, knight f3, black takes on d4, white plays bishop c4, and this is known in one of the main lines of the fantasy. We just have these extra moves in with the pawn on a5 and the black queen on c7. But in any case, it looks rather dangerous for black. There was a game from the previous round that continued bishop e6, bishop takes e6, pawn takes e6, knight takes d4, knight f6, castles. Probably white has some edge here. These are not necessarily the best moves, but the game was quite entertaining. Rook takes f6, with the idea that if black takes the rook, queen h5 check wins the bishop. So bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, gf6, queen takes f6, rook f8, queen takes e6 check, queen e7, queen c8, queen d8. And now the players repeated queen e6, queen e7, queen c8, and made a draw. I think that white may actually stand better by simply trading queens and going into the ending with two pawns for an exchange. But in any case, game was agreed drawn, Nabati against Erdos. So that's one of the cutting-edge games in this a4 move. But after d takes e4, a5, queen c7, f takes e4, e5, knight f3, I think that bishop g4 makes rather more sense. And this idea is analogous to bishop g4, again in the position without the a-pawn and queen moves. And it's a very good idea, just kind of holding the line in the center and not allowing white to get a big initiative. And that was also played in this tournament. Bishop g4, bishop c4, knight to f6, castles, bishop d6, black holds the line in the center, queen e1, castles, c3, knight bd7, h3, bishop f3, rook a e8, knight d2, and now black with e takes d4, c takes d4, c5, I think developed a nice position. E5 doesn't work because of the pin on the e-file, but after d5, black gets the e5 square and a whole lot of dark squares and takes over the position. That was a game Caspi against Rook, from also from round 8. Well, to be honest, I think Jabava's move is a slight improvement from d takes e4, and he decides to play e5 first. Now, there is a certain point to this move in that by not taking right away on e4, he does prevent the white knight from getting access to its natural f3 square right away. So he does do that, but I think that black was, as we saw in that rook game, black was in solid shape after pinning that knight, and I think that was really the way to go. After e5, we saw d takes e5, and now the move bishop c5 really doesn't do much for black because white can simply play a5, and if bishop f2 check, king e2, here to avoid losing a piece, black is going to have to trade queens. He can play queen d4 or queen c5, white will play b4 and force a trade anyway. So after d takes e5, Jabava plays d takes e4, a5, queen c7. And now we see the downside of the move order that black chose in this game, f4. Defending e5, preserving the integrity of white's pawn structure, and he's going to go after his e4 pawn later and try to get a nice initiative going. So knight h6, knight c3, bishop b4. Now for a little unlikely looking computer variation, there's instead of bishop d2, there's rook a4, c5, certainly not a forced move. Rook takes b4, pawn takes b4, knight b5, the idea of knight d6 check, white developing an initiative that compensates for the lost exchange, probably in the neighborhood of even situation. But Nepom plays certainly more predictable move, bishop d2, breaking the pin, threatening to take on e4. And now Jabava plays e3, shades of the Falkbeer counter gambit. It's a move that we see in that opening where black is just kind of purely playing for development, getting his pieces out and attacking. Although this position, I think the center is a bit more closed and doesn't work out quite the same way. I think Jabava didn't want to take the knight on c3, in which case he's kind of giving away some dark squares, but probably that was the best thing to do. After e3, bishop takes e3, castle. Thing is that white develops his pieces very quickly and isn't really, any behind in development. This makes a lot of natural moves. And here we see black is getting the pawn back, but white has a very nice structure for the middle game. The kingside majority is going to help produce an attack on the kingside, and black is vulnerable over there without a lot of pieces defending. White pieces can attack more easily than black defenders can get there. So rather dangerous situation for black in the middle game. So after white castles on move 14, we see knight to b4, bishop to e4, bishop f5. Those moves are quite natural. King h1 getting off the diagonal. White had many other good moves as well. King h1 is fine. And now bishop b6. Here, perhaps black should have played bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, and knight d5, centralizing the knight while he had the chance. White could play c4, knight e3, queen e3, and cause some trouble for this bishop on a5. But one thing black could do is to play bishop to b4. And if rook takes a7, knight f5, queen g1, rook takes a7, queen takes a7, queen d7. Yeah, white is up a pawn, but black has some practical chances for it. He has at least active pieces. And I think that in hindsight, Jabava would have been very much happier to play this kind of position, whatever a computer might say about it, than the one he got where white just had a firm initiative going and a real grip on the position. So to bishop b6, white traded. And now knight fg5, we start to see how the black king side is really poorly defended. And it's just not very clear at all what black should do to deal with his problems over there. He plays c5, and this is a weakening move, particularly the square d5 and this diagonal the bishop is on. But black is hoping to bring his queen over to the king side to defend. If he doesn't play c5, he could play, for instance, queen c5, and now white can take on f5, followed by queen h5. Very awkward move for black. Knight h6. And now it's possible to just go straight forward, knight ce4, queen c2, and f5. White's attack looks rather overwhelming with queen, two knights, and two pawns, backed up by this rook here. A lot of attackers, not a lot of defenders. Probably white would crash through there. So c5, it's already really kind of looking a little bit on the desperate side for black. Nepom simply plays rook ae1, and there were many other good moves as well, but the rook on e1 is nice because it's getting behind e6, that unopposed pawn. Nepom can see it, can see the future, can see that pawn advancing with great strength, and so puts his rook behind it. And now after queen g6, white basically is winning by force. That was not a strong move, but it's really kind of hard for black to be in any position to defend anyway with all the white pressure on the king's side. Well, Nepom takes the pawn on b7, and, well, black could just play rook b8, but the bishop then retreats to e4. White is just a pawn up with big structural advantage and still maintaining the initiative. So Jabovic tries to complicate a little bit with knight takes c2, but knight d5 is a very strong move, better than just simply taking the rook. This creates additional threats, knight e7, check with a fork, and it just isn't easy to defend that at all. If black sidesteps with king h8, knight e7, queen to b6, knight takes f5, knight takes f5, bishop takes a8. White is just simply winning lots of pieces. If black should get a chance to recapture on a8, there will be a queen e4 fork, winning either the rook or the knight. So black could also try king f8, and queen b5 is a strong move, trying to take on c5, rook ac8, not a pretty looking move. And probably here white has a host of wins, but one nice looking variation is to play e6. White is kind of going for a block here. Bishop takes e6, bishop takes c8, rook takes c8, queen a6. Black can't take the knight because the rook is hanging. Bishop f5, and now knight e6 check. Nice little move. Bishop takes e6 to try to keep the rook guarded. Queen d6 check, and white will either get a mate on e7 or a fork on e7, winning the queen. So rook takes d5 is about the best black can do. Bishop takes, bishop d3, queen f3. There are other strong queen moves as well, but this is most natural. Rook e8, and despite black's last move, white still powers ahead with e6, and black is really hard-pressed to defend against this move. If f6, e7 check, king h8, bishop c6, rather simple continuation is good. Bishop takes f1, bishop takes e8, queen takes e8, rook takes f1. White is up in exchange here. And if black takes on g5, fg5, knight g8, queen e4, that's winning back the knight because of the threat of rook to f8. Black could play something like queen takes e7, queen takes c2, queen takes g5, rook f5, winning the c5 pawn. White is just a clear exchange to the good, and will win without any trouble. Well, the game concluded e6, knight takes e1, rook takes e1, f takes e6, rook takes e6. And the problem for black is that his back rank is in bad shape. And it's kind of funny that with the move king h8, he tries to exploit white's back rank. Of course, rook takes queen, rook e1 would be a surprise finish. But after white simply makes luft with h3, his king is quite safe, but black cannot escape his back rank problems. Rook takes e6, bishop takes e6, threatening to checkmate starting with queen a8. Well, for black, he would be able to defend that threat with queen e8, but the problem is the bishop is hanging on d3. So he has to deal with the bishop. Bishop b5 does guard against queen a8 check because black can now interpose on e8. Not that that position would offer much hope for black either, but Nepomuk finds a very nice way to conclude the game, a very aesthetic finish to the game. We see suddenly the f-pawn starts to get rolling, f5. The black, of course, can't take the knight on g5 because queen a8 will lead to a back rank mate. So the queen retreats to e8, and now f6. And after black tries to defend with queen f8, f7. So nice little advance of the f-pawn trundling through f5, f6, f7. And after f7, Jubava realizes that he has absolutely no hope in this position, and he resigns. The thing is, white is threatening queen to e4, and this just isn't any way to even form a semblance of a defense. Just to demonstrate the threat, I'll make a move for black. Queen e4, g6, queen e5, and queen g7, white can queen and win. So really isn't any way for black. Not only black can't hold the position, he maybe can't even avoid checkmate in the next 10 moves, as powerful as that threat is. So after f7, Jubava resigned. He had been the tournament leader up to this point, but with this win, Nepomniachtchi leapfrogged him into first place and held the lead going to the last round, and then beat the veteran player Akopian to finish in clear first. Very nice tournament victory for the young Nepomniachtchi. He's a very up and down player, but when he's on, he does tend to win tournaments. And it'd be interesting to see if he can move to the next level, maybe play in Russian team events or get invited to the top drawer international tournaments. But a very big victory in the European Individual Championship, and of course that's also a World Cup qualifier. 22 players advance from there into that event. Okay, well that wraps it up for another week for me. Hope that you all enjoyed it. I'm Joel Benjamin, always a pleasure, and I hope that you'll join me again next time on ICC's Game of the Week.
Hi, this is Grandmaster Damian Lemos. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, The 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.